And let's go ahead and get into this teaching today. I want to have you turn in your Bibles this morning to Jeremiah 29, verse 11. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. And I love this scripture. It's probably one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible. I could teach on this verse for weeks and weeks and weeks, but I'll just touch on it because it feeds into what we've been talking about. Jesus gave 3 gifts after he rose from the dead. He gave us peace, he gave us purpose, and he gave us power. And we've studied about peace, and we've been studying for the last 2 or 3 weeks about purpose, and I want to continue to talk about purpose, and then we're going to talk about God's power right around the time of Pentecost, which is 50 days after Easter. But when we talk about purpose, we need to realize that, boy, there's something very exciting and there's something very thrilling about knowing that your life is made by design, made for a design, by purpose, for a purpose, on purpose. You're not an accident, you're not a mistake. No matter how you got here, you came from God. You might have come through your parents, might have. Obviously, you came through your parents. We all came through our parents, but we came from God. You were God's idea. Say, I was God's idea. Boy, I can never say that enough about myself. I can never say that enough about you. It's something very reassuring when you realize you were God's idea, and God's ideas work, and God's ideas succeed. How many know many of our ideas don't succeed? But all of God's ideas work. All of God's ideas succeed. God never has a bad idea, and you were his idea. So you have a great purpose, you have a great destiny, you have great potential because of God's divine purpose in your life. And what I love about this verse in Jeremiah 29:11, he says, "For I know," God is saying to his people, "For I know. Now, I know he's saying, I know the plans that I have for you. But I like to stop with those first 2 words right there when he says, I know. And I've talked about this before, but I want to remind you that God knows. God knows what you've been through. God knows what you're going through. God knows what you're going to go through. Listen to me. He knows what you've done wrong. He knows what's been done wrong to you. He knows what you're going to fail at. He knows what you're going to succeed at over the next few days, weeks, months, and years. He knows what hurts you. He knows what mystifies you. He knows what troubles you. He knows what angers you. He knows what has been done that has abused you. He knows the mistakes you've made. He knows everything about you. He knows. And yet, him knowing those things does not stop him dead in his tracks. He said, I know the plans that I have for you. So not only does he know all that has happened to us, all that is happening to us, and all that will ever happen to us, all that we've done, all that we're doing, and all that we will do, good, bad, and ugly. He knows all of those things, and yet his plan goes on. His plan continues. He doesn't say, whoa, I didn't know you were going to do that. Boy, I don't have a plan for that. He's got a plan for everything. He's got a plan for when you make a good decision. He's got a plan for when you make a bad decision. He's got a plan for when somebody treats you right. He's got a plan for when somebody treats you wrong. It wasn't his will for them to treat you that way. It wasn't his will for you to make a bad decision, but he has a plan in the midst of it. I know the plans that I have for you, he says. Plans for good, for welfare, for well-being. Plans of peace and not calamity and not fear and not evil. He says, but to give you a future and to give you a hope. How many know these are gifts today? Your future is a gift and your hope is a gift. These are gifts from God. You don't have to struggle over your future. God has given you, and he has a good future to give you, and he has a good hope to give you. These are gifts from him. And I want you to get a hold of this, that he's got a plan no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, no matter how far away you are from north, no matter how far away you are from your best version of yourself, no matter how far away you are from the path that you were once on, or no matter how far you feel like you are from God's best for your life, he has a plan to get you there. He has a plan. Say that. Say, God knows, and God plans, and God gives. He says all that right here in this verse. He said, I know, I plan, and I give. So he knows what he's doing in your life. He's got a plan for what he's doing in your life. And he gives you what you need for him to bring to pass His purpose and His will for your life. God knows. Say it again. God knows. God plans. And God gives. Boy, you can rest. You can have peace when you know those three things. So let's talk about that, though, because someone said people lose their way when they lose their why. People lose their way when they lose their why. And I thought, wow, that's a very powerful statement. That we lose our way. We end up making bad decisions. We end up going down wrong paths. We end up missing the will or purpose of God for our lives when we don't understand the why, when we don't understand that we have a purpose. We abuse our lives when we don't understand the purpose of our lives. See, here's the thing that will really help you to navigate through life, and that is that when you don't understand the purpose of something, that's when you'll abuse that thing. So when you don't understand the purpose of your body, you'll abuse your body. When you don't understand the purpose of sex, you'll abuse sex. When you don't understand the purpose of marriage, you'll abuse your marriage. When you don't understand the purpose of children and the purpose of parenting, you'll abuse your kids. And maybe you won't hit them or hurt them physically, but you will abuse their potential if you don't understand their purpose. And if you don't understand your purpose, you'll abuse your potential. You'll use your gifts, you'll use your talents, you'll use all the strength and all the what's available to you in life for the wrong reason, and you miss out on your potential. When you don't understand the purpose, then you end up abusing that thing or misusing that thing. And so and money is another example, is that when people don't understand the purpose of money, they abuse money or they misuse or mishandle money. So if you think money is a tool to make you happy, you'll abuse money. You'll use it to get people to do things for you and make things happen and try to find things that money was not created to give you. Money was created by God. Money is God's idea as a medium of exchange and as a way to trust Him so that He can trust you, and you can be faithful with the little, then faithful with much, and you can use money for powerful purposes to see souls saved, to see lives changed. Do you see, when you don't understand the purpose of a thing, that's when you abuse it or that's when you misuse it. Am I still in the right church here today? So this is why it's so important to go on this journey of discovering our purpose and understanding why we're here. But so when I heard that statement that people lose their way when they lose their why, I also added to it and thought, wow, people also lose their wow when they lose their why. We lose our way when we lose our why, and we lose our wow when we lose our why. In other words, life becomes boring when you don't understand you have a purpose, when you don't understand what you're on earth for, what you're living for. Life becomes boring. You lose the wow of life. You lose the excitement of life. You lose the joy of life. You lose the celebration. You see, when you just live in your current situation and see that as the whole picture, then you lack perspective and you are subjected to whatever whatever emotions that circumstances awaken in you, whatever emotions are created by that circumstance, you're under the control or you're imprisoned by that circumstance because you see that as the picture of your life. You got to step back and look at the bigger picture, and then each circumstance and each event in your life and each mistake in your life, and when somebody does something to you, those things don't control you because you step back and you see the bigger picture. So when somebody wrongs you, you can look at that as the final sentence on your life, or you can look at that and say, well, this is how I'm going to look at life now. I'm going to look at it from a wounded standpoint, from a victim mentality, from a feeling like people have betrayed me and people have hurt me and people have mistreated me. But if you step back and say, you know what, God is going to turn this thing around, because my faith is not in what somebody does to me or does for me or doesn't do to me or doesn't do for me. My faith is in the God who will create a way where there is no way, who will open a door where no man can close, who will close a door that no man can open. I'm trusting in a God who can more than make up for and more than compensate for whatever has been done to me. So now I'm looking at the bigger picture and realizing, wait a minute, God God is not limited by the things that we think limit us. God's not limited by your past. God's not limited by your pain. God's not limited by anything except what you believe. He's only limited by what you believe. That's the only thing that limits a person from getting saved, is they refuse to believe that Jesus is the way, so they reject Jesus, and guess what? They have limited God from giving them salvation because they have rejected the way that He has given them to be saved. And so when we get a hold of this why in life, why are we here? It's the search that everybody seeks. It's what everybody seeks after, their why, their purpose. You know, we think about that. How many know that animals don't think about that stuff? They don't lie awake at night wondering about their purpose. A dog's not thinking about, he's not dreaming or thinking or wondering or afraid of, I wonder what I'm here for. He's just dreaming about that bone. He's just dreaming about that little female dog down the street that if he can get away from your leash, he's going after her. He's not staying up at night thinking about why he's there. But we do. Why? Because God's created us as eternal beings. He's created us. Fish don't think about that. Monkeys don't think about that stuff. Birds don't think about that stuff. They don't wake up at night, wake up in the morning. They don't think about, why am I here? They just live by their instinct. We're greater creatures than that. We're a higher being than that because we're the ones made in the image of God. And that's why we have this search inside of us. That's why we have this drive inside of us to know why. Why am I here? Why did this happen? What can happen through this? And see, when we instead of asking why this happened to me, we need to ask, what's next, God? Because God can do anything for those who believe. All things are possible for those who believe. When you really look at your life and you think about all the things that have happened to you, we got a lot of reasons to just throw in the towel. All of us have a lot of reasons to just throw in the towel. Man, this person betrayed me and this person mistreated me and I failed here and I failed there. But God has a bigger purpose, and we need to see the bigger picture of His bigger purpose. And no weapon formed against you can prosper. That doesn't mean that there aren't going to be weapons formed against you. It just means none of them are going to prosper. None of them are going to reach their intended destination, which is what prospering is. Who's with me? Who's with me? Live long and prosper. What does that mean? To prosper, when people would use that phrase, may you prosper, or to live long and prosper, it's may you reach the intended destination. May you reach the intended destination. And so when He says no weapon formed against you will prosper, in Isaiah 54, no weapon formed against you will prosper, that means there will be weapons formed against you. And they will sometimes hurt you, and they will sometimes throw you off, but they will not succeed at reaching their intended destination. And when you believe that, here's the thing, when you believe that, that's when the weapon loses its power over you. That's when what somebody did to you loses its power over you, when you believe that's not going to reach its intended destination. That's not going to ruin me. That's not going to defeat me. That's not going to destroy me. That's not going to damage me. That's not going to harm me. It happened, but it's not going to reach its destination and keep me. And what is its destination? Its destination is to prevent you from reaching your destination. The destination of that weapon formed against you is to prevent you from reaching your destination or your destiny, which is where we get the word destination from. So the only thing that's limiting us is what we believe. The only thing that's keeping us back is what we believe. So when we lose our why, we lose our way. When we lose our why, we lose our wow. There's something powerful about understanding that you were made for something more. You were made for something bigger. You were made by God for a purpose. What happens is purpose breaks the power of boredom. Purpose breaks the power of boredom. Sometimes people make the worst decisions in their life because they're just bored. We have so much energy, we have so much strength, we have so much drive inside of us. We're made in the image of God. We have so much, but if we lack purpose, we will use our energy and use our drive to get rid of our boredom rather than using our energy to discover and to develop our purpose. And this is why people make bad decisions, because they're exerting their energy and strength in the wrong direction because they don't know what the direction is. They don't know which direction to go. So no wonder people get bored. No wonder people get distracted. So purpose breaks the power of boredom and gives us the wow to life. And purpose breaks the power of distraction. There are a lot of things that will distract you in this world. There are a lot of things the Bible talks about when the seed is sown in your heart. The desires for other things and the distractions of other things chokes the word out. And so what we have to realize is distractions are going to come, and things are going to try to pull us away, and people are going to try to pull us away, and things are going to try to pull us away. It's just like when it comes to your money. With your money, there are certain timeless principles to operate by with your money. There are certain things that will always produce a yield or yield a harvest. You know, investing in certain things will always yield a harvest. Over the long haul, the stock market will continue to grow, at least in this world system that we now are in. Even though we don't operate from this world system, we are still in this world. And there are certain real estate will always be, at least good real estate will always be a safe investment because God made the earth. And there's not any more earth being made. So all the earth that will ever be made has already been made. Of course, God's going to create a new heaven and a new earth, but I doubt there's going to be any real estate transactions going on there. But the point is so the reason why that real estate is such an important or such a good investment in most cases, not every. Now, if somebody says, well, I got some amazing swampland in Florida I really want you to buy. Obviously, there are certain pieces of land not to invest in, but generally speaking, real estate is a good investment because God made it. Now, you're made by God, so you're an even better investment. And when you, in business, stop for a minute here and put in parentheses, let me give you some business sense and some business wisdom for anybody who's, well, we're all in business in one way or another. But when you invest in people, that's when you're going to succeed at your business. When you're in business to invest in yourself, when you're in business to extract from people to have more for yourself, you'll usually fail in business eventually. You might have some initial success because of through manipulation and through sales pitches and stuff like that, but you'll eventually fail because the greatest investment you can ever make is in the human life, in other human beings. Well, I don't know how we got off over there, but so you say, well, I don't, how can I do, I'm a vacuum cleaner salesman. How can I invest? I'm just trying to make a living. But if you would stop for a second and reevaluate, you're not there to make a living. You're there to help that person have a better quality of life. And when you see this is not a transaction for you to make a commission on, but this is a way for you to serve another human being by helping their life get better through the product that you have to offer. Now you're looking at things from a whole different perspective, and now you're investing in people, and that will pay off in the long run far more than you trying to get a quick sale from anybody on anything that you're selling. Who's with me now? Now I've lived a long time compared to a lot of you. Maybe for some of you, I've lived not as long as you, but over my life, I can't even count how many cars I've bought from the time I was 16. Bought my first car, it was a 1970 Pontiac Catalina, beautiful green, ugly car, but it's what I could afford, $300. It cost me $300 to buy my first car. It was 1980 when I bought it. It was a 10-year-old car for $300. The first thing I found out was it had a bad transmission. That cost me another $300. Now I'm $600 into the thing. And but from that point on, I don't know how many cars, 30, 40, 50 cars over a period of time, over all these years. Yes, I'm that old. Over all these years, I bought a lot of cars. But you know what? I bought the most cars from the person who showed the most interest in me. Genuinely. And that person, I don't know how many cars I bought from him. 10 from the same person over years, maybe 15, maybe 20, I don't remember. But my point is that I don't have all these cars. You understand? Okay. I trade in the one I have for the one I'm buying, okay? I don't have like 20 cars. I've got one. I have one car. But I've had one car 50 different times. But my point is the guy who I'd walk into his office. He ran the whole auto dealership, and I'd walk in. He'd say, "Come into my office. Tell me what's going on in your life. Tell me what's going on in your church. Man, that sounds so cool." And I'd tell him, and he would listen. He would hold all his calls. He would hold all his appointments, and he would just talk to me. He would listen. He was interested, genuinely interested. How's your children? What's going on with things with this and that? And I'm like, man, this guy is like my pastor or something, man. I trust this guy. How much did you say? I don't care. Here, take whatever you want. Whatever you charge me, that's what I'm paying. Then I knew he was, I said, well, I really want this car. One time he said, I really want this car. I know I'm way off the topic now and time is running short, but it's a good story. I really want this car over here. He said, you know what, man? I mean, that car is awesome and it's great and it's beautiful and it's new and it's sexy and it's amazing. But if you just give me a few days and I'll find you one just like it. It's a couple years old, but it looks brand new, feels brand new, and it'll save you 20 or 30 grand. I said, done. And he would go out and he would find and search to find me the right car. He could have said, oh, you don't want to miss out on this brand new car, baby. This thing is the best. But he wasn't interested in making money. He was interested in making an investment. And it brought me back every time. It's a simple truth. It's a simple principle that if you invest in people, I'm here to invest in you. I'm here to invest in you. I'm not here to get something from you. I'm here to get something to you. You know, oh man. We have an opportunity to truly change our lives and change the world when we understand the value that each of us has. And when we truly understand one another's value, then we can truly walk in God's purpose for our lives. And I can encourage you about your value, your worth, that I'm not here to condone your lifestyle, but I'm not here to condemn your lifestyle. Somebody said, you better preach against that person's sin over there. Well, what about your sin? And what about that person? And if I was preaching about everybody's sin, that's all we'd ever be talking about, everybody's sin. And then mine would take up the most time of all. So my philosophy is not to condone your lifestyle or to condemn your lifestyle, but to cultivate your worth and your sense of value. Because when you understand your sense of value, you will understand a higher sense of purpose. And when you live for a higher sense of purpose, life's not boring anymore. Purpose breaks the power of boredom. Purpose breaks the power of distraction. Purpose breaks the power of depression. Purpose breaks the power of fear. And purpose breaks the power of our past. I wish I could talk to you about each of those, but it breaks the power of depression because even Jesus got depressed. Depression is not a sin. There's nothing sinful about feeling feelings. There's nothing sinful about being depressed. There's nothing sinful about being anxious. Sin comes from allowing those emotions to determine your decisions. And then your decisions lead you to bad behavior when it's a negative emotion. But Jesus knew how to process his emotions. So when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, it says in Mark chapter 14, he said, my soul is in anguish. One translation says, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful. equals depression. One translation even uses that word. My soul is depressed. My soul is sad. My soul is sorrowful. Jesus said that. But what he did about it was what determined the outcome of his life. And what did he do about it? He took it to God. And he said, Father, I don't want to do this. If this cup can pass from me, let it pass. But, what did he say? Come on, help me now. Come on, Bible scholars. But what did he say? Not my will, but thy will be done. And when he said that, that was his purpose, to die for our sins and to destroy the power of death and to destroy the power of the devil and destroy the power of sin. And his purpose powered him through his emotions and powered him through his depression. So purpose broke the power of depression. What if he would have let his depression determine his decision? Then depression would have broken the power of his purpose. But his purpose broke the power of the depression. Purpose breaks the power of fear. You know, if I took you to the top of a cliff that was 50 feet from the water, and I said, why don't you just go ahead and jump off and just be bold and just take a risk? 50 feet is a long way. It's 5 stories. So why don't you just jump off? Remember, anybody see on social media a few months ago or a couple of years ago when some girl pushed her friend off of a cliff into the water, and then there was a lawsuit because just don't push people off cliffs. But if I took you to the top of a cliff and I said, come on, jump, it's really cool. The water is really nice, and man, all you got to do is just leap and go feet first, and it'll be the greatest thrill of your life. And most people are going to be like, heck no, let me off of this thing. Who are you, the devil, trying to push me off a cliff? But if I took you to that same top of the cliff and said, your child is in the water drowning, what would you do? Immediately jump and immediately save your child. Why? Because purpose breaks the power of fear. Amen. Purpose breaks the power of fear. And knowing the purpose of saving your child is greater than the limitations that you've put on yourself and the fear of the ramifications or the consequences of what might happen when you splash. Purpose will break the power of fear. Oh, every woman that has ever had a baby, for the first time, not that I know, obviously, but I've heard multiple times. But the idea of that child being in your arms and you raising that child and fulfilling your dream or desire of being a mother, it powers you through the fear of what it's going to feel like, the fear of the hurt that it might bring, the fear, and then you could just play it all through. If you could just fast forward your mind for a minute, you think about all of the years of pain. You know, it's not, the pain of childbirth is nothing compared to the pain of child raising. Hey. But you don't think about that because you're thinking about the purpose of being a parent, the purpose of showing love, the purpose of unconditional love, the purpose of bringing somebody into this earth better than you. And that powers you through all the pain. Are you starting to get a picture of this? But look, I'm going to tell you something. Everybody is driven by something. You can either be driven by purpose, or you can continue to be driven by the things that have driven most of society and the majority of Christians too. And if I can put it to you this way, some people are driven by a problem. They're driven by their fears. They're driven by a painful memory. They're driven by a broken belief system. They're driven by past dysfunction. They're driven by a broken condition of their soul. They're driven by a displaced sense of value or a lack of realizing their value, and that drives people in life. Like, so I got to be valuable, or I've got to get past this pain, or I've got to I've got to get past this memory, or none of those things should be driving you. We need to be driven by purpose. But here are the 5 main things that drive people. Let me give them to you real quick. Some people are driven by guilt. They spend their lives running from regrets, hiding from their shame. And guilt-driven people are manipulated by their memories. Guilt-driven people are manipulated by their memories, and that's why we need to have our minds renewed so that our memories do not manipulate us. What we did wrong manipulates us into overcompensating or trying to always make up for our mistakes. Jesus has already forgiven you and healed you and delivered you from condemnation and guilt. You don't have to be driven by guilt. We need to be driven by purpose. I am on this earth for a reason, and my mistakes and my sins and my failures do not have to drive my life. They do not have to drive my decisions. That's why people that make a really bad decision and then try to compensate it to cover up with a really good decision, and they can't sustain, how can I put this? You cannot sustain a behavior that is an effort to make up for a previously bad behavior. You cannot sustain a good behavior for a long time when you're trying to just make up for a bad behavior. Does that make sense? That's why we need to change our view of ourselves and stop being driven by guilt, because it only causes us to live good for a little while with a little bit of motivation, because I really got to make up for it. So when a guy he does something, he hurts his wife in some way, or vice versa, she hurts him in some way, then he's, showers her with chocolate, or showers her with whining and dining, I don't know, whatever he showers her with. But the point is, he's compensating, now he's trying to make up for the mistake that he made, and that can only last for a short period of time, in a short burst. It's not a lifestyle, it's not a way of thinking, it's a way of compensating for guilt. And when you try to compensate for guilt, you are not going to be able to sustain it, and you're going to set yourself up for even a worse fall. So we have to learn to adjust what drives us. Instead of guilt driving us, purpose needs to drive us. Why am I on this earth? Get the bigger picture and stop living in the small picture and start living in the big picture. And so that's one thing that drives people. Another thing that drives people is resentment. Resentment drives people. They hold on to their hurts. They hold on to what people have done to them. And instead of releasing their resentment and releasing their pain through forgiveness, they end up living it over and over again and repeating it over and over again in their minds and justifying why I can't get further, I can't get ahead because of what this person did to me, and until they apologize. Listen, we can't be driven by resentment and our need for somebody who owes us an apology. You need to get to the point where you have accepted the fact that nobody owes me an apology and nobody owes me an explanation. And if you can get to that place where you don't feel anybody owes you that because you didn't give it to God, you didn't give God an apology, you didn't even get saved because you were sorry. You got saved because you believed Jesus rose from the dead. You got saved because you believe his blood cleansed you from sin. It wasn't because you said you were sorry. It was because you put faith in his provision for your sins. You confessed with your mouth Jesus is Lord. You believed in your heart God raised him from the dead, and guess what happened? You were saved. So God didn't even hold you to a standard of you better stop, you better say you're sorry, you better do this, do that, and apologize and explain to me your behavior. You don't have to do all that. You just accept the gift, the free gift of salvation. By grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves is a gift of God. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say we cannot be driven by resentment and unforgiveness. We can't be driven by guilt. The third thing that we can't be driven by is we can't be driven by fear, and yet this is what drives people. The reason we make the decisions we make, the reason we live the lifestyles we live, the reason why we have the boundaries we have is because we're afraid. We do certain things because we're afraid of what will happen if we don't, and we constantly let fear drive us. But if you let purpose drive you, God created me on purpose, for a design, with a design. And you then will break barriers in your life. You won't live behind a wall of fear. You will live in faith. You will live in coming up out of the water, getting out of the boat. Peter said, Lord, if that's you, command me to come. Everybody else was afraid. Thank God for Peter. At least he got out of the boat. People think of Peter and they say, oh, but he sank in the water. But at least he walked out there. At least he gave it a whirl. At least he gave it a college try, better than a college try. He walked on water. He took a few steps, but then he became afraid. But the point is he got out of his fear by getting out of the water and knowing that there was a purpose. I'm going to meet Jesus there in the middle of the water. I'm going to see him. Lord, if it's you, command me to come. Jesus said, come. And so what did Peter do? He got out of the boat and walked. And he broke out of the barrier of fear because he decided fear is not driving me. Faith is driving me. I'm living by faith, not by fear. You start living that way, living by faith. Abide, these three, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. This is how we live. This is what should drive us. This is what should motivate us. And this is what will change the world. It starts by changing the way you think. It starts by changing the way you look at things. It starts by changing the way you look at life, the why, the reason why I'm here. Other people are driven by money. Hey, look, there is nothing wrong with having money, and it's better to have it than not have it. Ask anybody. But again, if it's driving you, you're going to compromise and make bad decisions in order to obtain money at the expense of people and at the expense of true joy and true peace, which comes from trusting God and believing God and using and understanding money has a mission. And when you see that your money has a mission, you'll use it in the right way, and you'll invest it in the right ways, because you know that money has a mission, money has a purpose. I'm not ever thinking about, I can't wait till I get my big financial breakthrough. One day, I can't wait till somebody gives me $5 million, $10 million, or one business idea. I don't live like that. I look at and say, okay, here's what I have. I'm going to invest some here, and I'm going to do some with this, and I'm going to do some with that. And over time, I know I'm going to win, and I'm going to succeed, because over time, multiple good decisions strung together over the course of time, even if there's a few bad ones along the way, which there certainly have been for me, ultimately that will produce great success rather than waiting for one miracle financial thing to happen in your life. Just follow a plan and understand that your money has a purpose, and that's what a budget is for, to understand each dollar has purpose. I'm just trying to give you a few practical tips here, help somebody along the way, but you see, when everything is put in the perspective of purpose, it succeeds, it grows, and our life is no different. That's exactly how our life will grow. Let's not be driven by money, but let's use money rather than use money to use other people. Let's use money to bless other people and to empower our future with the seeds we sow. The fifth thing that people allow to drive their lives is the need for approval. The need for approval. I think a lot of us have fallen into that category at least once or twice in our lives, I'm sure. But we allow the expectations of children, parents, teachers, friends control our lives. We allow the expectations of people on social media to control our lives, what people are going to think of us, what people are going to like about us, whether they like us, whether they give us enough thumbs up, whether they like our post, whether they like our Instagram picture, whether they like, I want to be liked, I want to be approved, I want people to like me, to love me, to need me, to want me. And see, this is when you start making bad decisions, when you value other people's approval more than you value God's approval. When you have God's approval, when you realize God approves of you, you stop seeking it from other places and from other people, and you stop putting more pressure on them. You stop putting more pressure on people to like you, and you put pressure on yourself to meet somebody else's expectations, and you're going to constantly be disappointed. But when we realize we've already met God's expectations by believing in His Son, and He approves of us because of that. He approves of us because we believe. He approves of us because we're now His children. He approves of us because we've put our faith in the cross. We put our faith in the blood. You're approved. So now I'm not going to be driven by approval or my need for it, because I have that from God. I'm not going to be driven by money because money is a means to an end, not an end. I'm not going to be driven by fear because there's something greater than the things I'm afraid of, and that's I don't want to miss out on God's purpose for my life, and I don't want to miss out on fulfilling my potential. And so I'm not going to be driven by fear. I'm going to be driven by purpose, which will push me past my fears. And I'm not going to be driven by resentment. I forgive everybody and anybody that's ever done anything to me. I ask forgiveness from anybody and everybody that I've ever done anything against, and I forgive myself because God has forgiven me. Therefore, I'm not going to live in resentment another day in my life. Whatever you did to me, whatever I did to myself, whatever I did to others, whatever has happened in the past, God is bigger than the event of that moment in time when that person hurt me or when I made a bad decision, what I did to somebody or what they did to me. God is bigger than that. And therefore, my faith is in Him. I am putting my faith in the bigness of God, not in the bigness of my regret and my resentment and what they did to me. That does not have power over my future unless I give it power over my future. And I refuse to give anything anybody's ever done to me power over my future, and I refuse to give my mistakes power over my future. Well, let me just tell you something about how we sometimes think that our mistakes will limit us from God's great purpose for our lives. Let me remind you, because this is why we allow these other things to drive us, whether it's guilt, resentment, fear, money, or the need for approval. The reason why we allow these things to drive us is because we feel disqualified from a life of greatness. Our mistakes disqualify us. As long as we're doing good, we're qualified. But as soon as we make a mistake or as soon as we blow it, we're disqualified. And God wants you to know your mistakes do not disqualify you and cannot derail God's purpose for your life. Consider for a moment some of the great men and women of the Bible and what they did that could have or should have derailed them, but didn't. Abraham lied, tried to give away his wife twice. Anybody try that? It doesn't work. He slept with his wife's maidservant. These are the things that Abraham did, yet Abraham became the father of many nations. Sarah laughed when God said, you're going to have a child. Sarah doubted. She was suspicious. She was angry. She became bitter at Hagar and Hagar's child that she allowed to happen, Ishmael. And yet she became the mother of many nations, a woman of faith, as God defines her in Hebrews 11. Elijah suffered depression and was suicidal, yet he called down fire from heaven, outran a chariot, and became one of the greatest prophets that ever lived until John the Baptist. Joseph in the Bible became boastful when he had his dream. He was abused by his brothers, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery by his brothers, and yet he became the prime minister of Egypt and over the entire world and saved the world from starvation. Job lost his family and his fortunes when he lived in fear, saying, what I have feared has come upon me. My children are going to curse God and die. My children are going to curse God and die. And he lived in fear and he lost everything he had. And yet he became the man that we know as a person that was blessed double for his trouble. And God blessed him and God restored all of his lost fortunes and all of his lost family and gave him a better family, a better fortune, a better future, a better life in a period of 9 months. When everybody looks at the book of Job and says, I'm going through a Job period of my life. How long you been going through that? Oh, about the last 40 years or so. Well, Job only went through it for 9 months because it just takes 9 months to give birth to anything. And what we need to realize is that with all these mistakes these people made and all these misfortunes that came upon them, it didn't stop God's purpose for their life. Moses was a stutterer. He suffered social anxiety, yet he became the great deliverer of the people of God. Gideon was fearful. He felt inferior, and yet he became a mighty man of valor and saved Israel. Samson was driven and controlled by lust, yet he took out more enemies in his death than in his entire life. Rahab was a prostitute, yet rescued Joshua and Caleb and hid them and saved the nation of Israel. The woman at the well had been divorced 5 times, yet became the first woman evangelist in history. What's stopping you? What's holding you back? I'm telling you, there's one thing and one thing only. It's your limiting beliefs. It's your limiting belief about your value. It's your limiting belief about your potential. It's your limiting belief about the power, the beauty, and the value of your soul. Remember, your soul is so valuable that God didn't replace it. He renewed it. And He is renewing it still. Your soul is so valuable. We're made up of spirit, soul, and body, and yet God gives us a new spirit. So He considered that our old spirit was replaceable. He's going to give us a new body when we get to heaven, so He considers our body to be replaceable. But the one thing He's not going to give us a new one of, and He's not going to replace, is our soul. Why? Because He considers it so valuable. It contains your memories. It contains your mind to think, your heart to feel, and your will to choose. It contains your personality. It contains your resilience. It contains your ability to bounce back. Inside of your soul contains your ability to make good decisions or to rebound from bad ones. Inside of your soul contains the ability to bounce back from the worst failures, to bounce back from the worst mistakes, to bounce back from the times that people have thrown down on you, pushed you down, held you down, kept you down, and yet God says, greater is He that is in you than he is in the world. You have a living soul that is durable. You have a living soul that is on design, by design, that has the duration of eternity. It will never die. Your soul will live forever. Your soul will never die. It will not die in heaven. It will not die in hell. It will not die on this earth. It will live forever. It will live forever in heaven if you accept Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord. It will live forever in hell if you reject Him. But you have so much value, you have so much worth that your soul is going to last forever and ever and ever and ever. It cannot be broken. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be defeated. It cannot be stopped. It cannot stop breathing. You have a living breath inside of you. It is your soul, and no one can take it from you. God can't even take it from you. God can't stop you from having a soul that lives forever, but that's why He has made a way for us to not allow our soul's decisions to send us to hell, and He's given us a way out by sending Jesus and giving us a Savior for our soul to wash away the sins of our soul, giving us a new spirit, but renewing our soul and transforming it by restoring it and healing it and making it better and making it whole and fixing the bad edges on it. And let me tell you something, when you live it, when you see yourself the way God sees you, it's going to elevate your choices. It's going to elevate your decisions. It's going to elevate who you surround yourself with. It's going to elevate what you surround yourself with. It's going to elevate your sense of purpose, your sense of destiny. It's going to deliver you from addiction. It's going to deliver you from fear. It's going to deliver you from resentment. Oh, the soul has value. Oh, your soul is beautiful. It's worthy. It's valuable. It's precious. It's eternal. It will never die. Believe in it. Embrace it. Accept your worth and realize that the more you understand your worth, it doesn't make you proud. It makes you humble. Whoa, I got this soul that God made me a caretaker of. I can take care of this soul. I can restore this soul and let God work in me, and He can finish what He started in my life and my soul. He loves me so much that He's willing to accept me with all my imperfections. If your soul didn't have any value, He'd be like, I'm getting rid of that. I'll give you a new one of that. Then we lose all of our memory. We lose all of our sense of taste and sense of smell. And we lose all of our ability to learn from the mistakes of life and to grow from our pain and to find purpose in our pain. And we lose our humanity when we lose our soul. And that's why there's not all the wealth in this world worth exchanging for your soul. Because your soul is so valuable. You get a hold of this, and you're going to take care of your soul. You're going to feed it. You think about how much you care for your dog. You don't have to care that much for your cat because it kind of takes care of itself, right? But the way you take care of your dog, feed it, groom it, get rid of all the insects and fleas, and you go to the vet, and you get it a new leg and a new heart and a new anything. You'll do anything for that dog. Why? Because you value it. But you have so much more value to God than an animal. And animals are good because they teach us to value life. But we need to value human life even higher and even more. And it starts with you valuing you.